Good evening. I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily for Friday, August 26th. We begin tonight on the last leg of the NATO Secretary General's visit to Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada has offered to be the home of NATO's new Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic. Mr. Trudeau made the announcement at CFB Cold Lake, Alberta. This is where he met this morning with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. The Prime Minister also made a direct link between Canada's work with Washington on defending the continent to security in Europe. He says when Canada invests in defending North America and the Canadian Arctic, Europeans also benefit. Meanwhile, prospective home buyers are facing fewer bidding wars as the real estate market cools and prices fall. But realtors and economists aren't sure how long the pricing slide will last and how low it would go. The latest data from the Canadian Real Estate Association shows the average price for a home fell 5% year over year to almost $630,000 in July. It is predicting that will rise 10.8% to more than $762,000 by the end of this year. Turning to Ontario now, where the COVID-19 Science Advisory Table is being dissolved. The advisors issued a statement this morning saying Public Health Ontario informed them that the group will end its work as of September 6th. The Science Table was formed in July 2020, and through the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, its advice and guidance ran contrary to government actions on several occasions. On the East Coast, Nova Scotia's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Robert Strang, is worried that people are getting too complacent about COVID-19. He says with the possible new wave of infections this fall and winter, it's important for people to keep wearing masks in public places and get vaccinated. Dr. Strang says more vaccine doses will be made available starting next month for children and adults. And booster shots are coming to 5 to 11-year-olds starting September 6th. Coalition Avenir Quebec looks set to win a majority in the upcoming provincial election. This is according to poll aggregator website QC125.com. It is pegging the odds of Premier François Legault's government winning a majority government in the October 3rd election at more than 99%. Laval University political scientist Valerie Ann Maeo says Mr. Legault has been able to capitalize on a new political landscape, which began shifting even before his party was formed in 2011. Mr. Legault is expected to call the election on Sunday. All right, switching gears to a case involving Global Affairs Canada and Russia's Children's Rights Commissioner. New sanctions have been levied against Maria Lvova-Belova. The Russian official allegedly orchestrated the abduction of Ukrainian children from the self-proclaimed republics of Donetsk and Luhansk. Global Affairs Canada claims that she was the mastermind behind the scheme that also saw to the children's adoptions into Russian homes. The abductions are some of the roughly 28,000 suspected war crimes that are currently being investigated by Ukraine with help from Canada. All right, taking a look at the Finance Department's monthly fiscal monitor report, which indicates the federal government posted a surplus of $10.2 billion. Now, this is compared to a deficit of $36.5 billion in the same period last year. The report says Ottawa's 2022 to 2023 financial results continue to improve. This comes as spending on temporary COVID-19 measures winds down. It says program expenditures fell by 25% to $29 billion, which is due to lower transfers to individuals and businesses. Revenue was up nearly 21% to $18.7 billion. Marketing experts are warning brands of looking opportunistic. This comes after multiple ads in support of women with gray hair following CTV news anchor Lisa Laflamme's recent dismissal. Retail analyst Bruce Winder says they should prepare for added scrutiny from customers and employees when they take a stand on hot-button issues. Media reports have tied Ms. Laflamme's ouster to her pandemic decision to stop dyeing her hair. It's not clear if companies like Wendy's and Dove will pull their advertising dollars from Bell Media stations. A 19-year-old Ukrainian who is new to Canada is using TikTok to share his adventures in the country. Andrian Makhnochov came to Canada from Ukraine in May to live with his two brothers who were already in Regina. This was after making the decision with his family to leave the country. Some of his most popular uploads include trying Canadian food staples. All right, stay tuned. We'll have more news from around the world coming up next. We have our market update as well as our gas update with Dan McTeague coming up shortly after the break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. It is time for Forum Daily's weekly energy update with Dan McTeague, Senior Petroleum Analyst at gaswizard.ca. All yours.
Well, thank you very much for that, Nima. And what a couple of weeks it's been. The markets are really in a bit of a tug of war. That is the energy markets. You have on the one side pessimists that believe that there's an abundance of supply, there's inflationary pressures. The Friday decision by the U.S. Fed as to whether it's going to raise interest rates. Overall concerns about inflation, I think, have a lot to do with why we've seen prices drop as dramatically as they have. And if you look on average since the beginning of June, we're down about 60 cents a liter. That's something that most would never have imagined possible. But all this really is short-term gain, long-term pain. The dramatic drop in price, very welcomed, is nevertheless going to increase demand. More importantly, especially on the diesel side, reflecting what's happening in Europe with the shortage of natural gas, watch out for September. The other side of the equation is the supply picture. Supply picture for diesel, supply picture for oil, supply picture for heating fuels and jet fuel. All those things are in a very critical position right now. So the landscape is one of some traders saying, hey, we're going to shed our positions, while reality is that we are at a very dangerous level in terms of global supplies. Yes, there's the issue of Iran, whether they'll be allowed to come back in and pump oil, whether the United States will accept that. But we have now evidence from OPEC, especially Saudi Arabia, saying if Iran is allowed to come back in and if markets continue to be dysfunctional, which I believe they are, we're going to chop back the amount of oil production. What that means for Canada is that gas prices that we're seeing in the $1.90 range in British Columbia this week will probably stabilize, maybe go up 3 or 4 cents a liter. For the prairies, they'll continue to drop. So we'll see Calgary and Edmonton in the 140 range, maybe even the 130 range. For neighboring Saskatchewan, Manitoba, you're still looking at $1.50 to $1.60. Winnipeg's extremely high, and that does have some cause for concern. Retailers are doing extraordinarily well there. They should be dropping prices. Ontario, you'll continue to see prices in the 154 to 156 range, likely up about 2 to 3 cents net this week, certainly by the end of next week. And then, of course, for the Maritimes, Quebec, staying in the $1.90, $1.85 range. Actually, you can buy gasoline in Montreal for about $1.75 right now, so they may push back up to $1.80. For the Maritimes, again, looking at some pretty big decreases this week, but that's not likely to last, as we might see markets move back up a little bit this time next week, next Friday and Saturday. So what that really means is that across the country, we are looking at policies that give the appearance of things going well. The Canadian dollar is extraordinarily weak, continues to remain very weak, and no announcement by our federal government to come to the rescue of Europe with respects to additional natural gas or the building of LNG. One would have expected that would have been a decision by the federal government along with the German chancellor. He goes home empty-handed, facing a very grim, very cold winter, while Canada continues to virtue signal on this idea that you can somehow get rid of natural gas. Look, the world is moving ahead of Canada, and if we continue down this road, you'll have not only a weak dollar, you'll have very little in the way of investments, capital coming from around the world to invest in Canada. You can't continue to live on borrowed money and subsidies for EVs, for solar panels, for hydrogen, and of course for wind power. We know that the cost of living is rising in Canada, driven by energy, most importantly, driven by woke energy policy that is having the effect of making life very unaffordable for Canadians. I'll have a little bit more to say about that next week, Nima, but in the meantime, I think the focus, if you go to my site, affordableenergy.ca, or if you look at what some of the work we're doing at gaswizard.ca, that's the site I run that predicts prices, you get a pretty good idea of where I think this is really the proverbial calm before the storm. There's going to be a significant price to pay by Canadians this winter. And unlike many other falls and winters where you often see prices drop, I expect prices to go up at least another 30 to 40 cents a litre for diesel and for gasoline. It won't be helped, of course, by the federal government adding another carbon tax next April, and in about a year and a half from now, the real effect of the Clean Fuel Standard, which is really to mix more ethanol into gasoline. At the end of the day, all these things point to one direction: less driving and a higher cost for just about everything. We'll talk next week and have a little bit more on that to say. Thanks, Nima.
Lots to keep our eyes on. Thanks for that, Dan. Again, that was Dan McTeague, Senior Petroleum Analyst at gaswizard.ca. He is also the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. All right, stay with us. When we come back, we'll have our weekly crypto and digital asset update with Catherine Murray. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now it's time for our weekly cryptocurrency and digital asset update with Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here. Take it away, Catherine.
Thanks, Nima. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly crypto and digital asset update. I am Catherine Murray. Well, we are seeing cryptocurrencies trade down by about 1 to 2% this morning. This, of course, following Fed Chair Jerome Powell's speech at Jackson Hole, where he reiterated his stance that they are going to combat inflation. It was a little bit more hawkish, in other words, than perhaps the market had been anticipating, which we saw the market move up by about 1 to 2% yesterday. So we are seeing the reversal of that. Equity markets are down by about 1 to 2% as well. As it relates to the cryptocurrency market, the total market cap right now stands at $1 trillion. Bitcoin is down by about 7% week over week, but the prior week was actually up 6%. So in other words, we're a little bit range bound here as we continue to try to figure out the direction of the economy and, of course, the direction of the U.S. Federal Reserve and interest rates. In terms of crypto news, Chicago-based exchange operator CBOE has reportedly partnered with some private equity partners in order to expand and scale their business globally as it relates to their interest in cryptocurrencies. Now, recall, from a background perspective, the CBOE back in 2017 was actually the first exchange to list Bitcoin futures in the United States. So continuing that growth there. Also, Cowen & Co., an investment bank, has Cowen Digital. They have hired 2 crypto, I want to say somewhat veterans, although it's still such a new industry to use that word. But nonetheless, a couple of key figures here. They did hire blockchain's former head of institutional business development, and they also hired a sales associate from CoinDesk. The company is actively hiring to build out their platform, their digital platform, over the next 5 years, that being Cowen Digital. Interestingly as well, the crypto exchange FTX, which has spent hundreds of millions of dollars over the past number of months bailing out crypto lenders. Remember the saga that saw so many bankruptcies occur. And of course, they got caught up in the crypto winter. They are now focused on bringing the derivatives market to the United States in a full-scale approach, really to provide market access as well as liquidity to the United States, which you're seeing more so over in international markets. So bringing that to the United States. Recall, of course, as well that the founder of FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, one of the most recognizable faces within the space, he said that he sees significant upside within the derivatives market. And as it relates to the regulatory aspect of digital assets, always important to point out, the former U.S. CFTC commissioner says that the crypto space is in dire need for regulatory clarity. And one interesting point as it relates to the reason why we need regulation is because of the potential for contagion and the need to have financial stability. We've seen significant increase in correlations between cryptocurrencies, digital assets, and the equity markets. And in fact, as we know, with so many people sitting at home during the pandemic and checks being written by governments around the world, crypto trading has surged significantly. And in fact, the value of crypto assets went up by 20-fold in just 1 year alone, from $1 trillion to $3 trillion. As I said, we're back down to $1 trillion. But nonetheless, you can see the incredible effect that and the interest that people have had within the space. The reason why this is important, because if there is a downtick, which we've seen, a crypto winter, you often will see investors also have to sell other asset classes. And you just want to make sure that there is proper regulation surrounding every asset class that could be affected. The correlation specifically within the Asian markets is significant. And the Indian market, in fact, the correlation between the Indian market and Bitcoin is up by tenfold. So again, a significant need to make sure that the regulatory framework does exist. And lastly, I would just say that the crypto ATM firm Bitcoin Depot, always interesting to note the deals within the crypto space. So a crypto ATM, Bitcoin Depot, is looking to raise $885 million in a SPAC to go public. Nima, I'll leave it there. No shortage of news within the crypto space, and always interesting to see a potential deal and an IPO take place in this market that we're in. I'll leave it there.
Thanks for that, Catherine. Again, that was Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here. For more news on the crypto markets and all things finance, be sure to tune in on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern, only on the News Forum Network. All right after the break, we'll be back with more international news, from Moderna suing Pfizer to NASA preparing to launch a new rocket to the moon. Stay tuned. COVID-19 vaccine maker Moderna is suing its main competitors, Pfizer and German drug maker BioNTech. It is accusing them of copying its technology to make their COVID-19 vaccine. Both two-shot vaccines use mRNA technology to help patients fight the coronavirus. Moderna's CEO says it pioneered the technology and invested billions of dollars in creating it, and that its rival's vaccine infringes on patents that Moderna filed between 2010 and 2016. Well, as fears of a recession loom in the U.S., Federal Reserve Board Chairman Jerome Powell warns of further rate hikes. He says the U.S. Central Bank will likely impose more large interest rate hikes in coming months. This to combat the highest inflation in 4 decades. Mr. Powell says there are unfortunate costs of reducing inflation. He acknowledged the Fed's continued tightening of credit will cause pain for many households and businesses. This is because its higher rates further slow the economy and potentially lead to job losses. All right, well, meanwhile, inflation in the U.S. eased last month as energy prices tumbled. The U.S. Commerce Department reports the annual inflation rate declined to 6.3% in July from 6.8% in June. The report shows energy prices dropped last month after surging in June. So-called core inflation, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, rose at an annual rate of 4.6%, which is lower than the 4.8% recorded in June. Turning to the UK now, where residents will see an 80% increase in their annual household energy bills. The UK's energy regulator announced Friday that prices will go from £1,971 a year to £3,549 in October. It follows a record 54% annual spike in April. The costs are roiling the UK's economy, which has the highest inflation rate among the group of 7 wealthiest democracies. All right, well, back in the U.S., the Department of Justice has released a 32-page affidavit used to justify the search of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate earlier this morning. The FBI stated that 14 of the 15 boxes recovered from the Florida mansion in January contained documents with classification markings. Previously released documents showed that the federal agents are investigating potential violations of 3 federal laws. This includes one that governs gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information under the Espionage Act. Moving to an investigation in Australia looking into former Prime Minister Scott Morrison. A retired judge has been appointed to investigate how Mr. Morrison was able to secretly amass unprecedented ministerial powers in defiance of political conventions. Mr. Morrison secretly appointed himself to 5 ministerial roles between March 2020 and May 2021. This was usually without the knowledge of the original minister. Former High Court Justice Virginia Bell will report her findings on November 25th. A daring rescue from a burning Philippine ferry saved at least 73 of the 82 passengers and crew aboard. Many people jumped into the water as flames and black smoke billowed from the ferry. Benedict Fernandez says he jumped from the third-floor deck with his 2 children. This was because the soles of their feet were already feeling the heat. Meanwhile, France continues to feel the heat from climate change, which is having an effect on the prestigious vineyards of Bordeaux. The harvest that once started in mid-September is now happening earlier than ever. This with vintners starting to pick grapes in mid-August as a result of severe drought. Paradoxically, the season of heat waves and wildfires has produced excellent grapes despite lower yields. But achieving the harvest required creative changes in growing techniques. And producers who have seen the effects of global warming are worried about what is to come. Incoming spoiler alert for the new Minions movie. Chinese movie bloggers are split in their reaction to a postscript added to the version of the latest Minions movie playing in the country's theaters. It says a villainous character who ends the movie as a free man is later jailed for 20 years. Some bloggers say the addition is an overreaction, while others say it demonstrates correct values and sends a message that crime doesn't pay. NASA is getting ready to launch its new moon rocket on Monday morning. The Artemis 1 mission is years late and billions of dollars over budget. The 98-meter rocket will attempt to send an empty crew capsule into a lunar orbit. And if all goes well, astronauts could strap in as soon as 2024 for a lap around the moon. This with NASA aiming to land 2 people on the lunar surface by the end of 2025, which marks a return to the moon after almost 50 years. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Remember, for more news on demand, you could follow us on social media or online. Take care, Canada.